Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Athletics Weekly podcast, brought to you by the Doha Marathon by Ooredoo. My name's Euan Crumley, and in every show we bring you everything you need to know from the world of run, jump and throw, analysing the biggest stories and speaking to key names from the sport. You join us in what feels like the calm before the storm in the world of athletics as we begin 2025. With much of the world locked in training camps, it's been relatively quiet of late, but all of that is about to change as an indoor season that includes editions of the European and World Championships comes into view. It will be a busy start to a long year that will come to a climax with the Outdoor World Championships in Tokyo in September. There's still plenty to talk about though, following the end of an Olympic year, and this is the perfect time to look forward to what might be coming in the months ahead. This month's special guest is World 1500 metre champion, Olympic 1500 metre silver and bronze medalist, and World Indoor 3000 metre champion Josh Kerr, who discusses that remarkable middle distance final in Paris and his involvement in the upcoming Grand Slam track project. But before we hear from him, I'm joined by AW's Managing Director and Olympic silver medalist Wendy, as well as AW Head of Digital Jason Henderson. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
We are definitely in this slightly odd sort of half world at the moment, but I think it's fair to say we probably need this chance to catch our breath before we steamroll into another athletics calendar that's bursting at the seams. Wendy, it's another challenging year ahead for athletes who won't be short of opportunity to compete.
I think I said at the end of one of the podcasts last year that it was such a great year in 2024. It almost whetted the appetite for the year ahead. And here we are at the beginning of 2025 with marathons starting on the world circuit, the indoor season looming, and athletes announcing where they're going to compete. So you start to get even more excited when you anticipate fields in events like the Boston Indoor Games or the Milrose Games and European World Indoors, and it's all fast approaching. Nothing is too far away, and as you both know, and the team at AW, we're talking already about travel and where we're going to go in the year to make sure that we bring the best coverage from the side of roads at marathons and cross country and indoors. Yeah, it's all a bit crazy and it's not too far away now.
Yeah, Jason, what do you think about this kind of time of year? It's obviously not the case that, nothing's happening. There are plenty of events going up along, but as Wendy said, we're just starting to see little hints of what some of the bigger names are starting to do. People coming out of training hibernation a little bit. It starts to set the scene a bit.
Yeah, it's an exciting time of year. I mean, it's the lull before the storm. Everybody's getting ready for the bigger competitions later on this year. So there's lots of excitement and anticipation. I personally, as a athletics journalist, find the next 3 or 4 months to be a bit more manageable. It's a bit of a nicer time of year to actually work as an athletics journalist. You've only got the indoor meetings and cross-country races and then a few road races start to appear. Once things get to about May or June, it just goes completely chaotic with events literally every day, and it's very, very hard to keep tabs on all the performances. But once you go into January, February, March, I find it you can just about keep track of what's happening. So it's a fun and I wouldn't say completely relaxing time of year, but it's certainly a bit more relaxing than the peak of summer.
Yeah. Do you think the pressure will be off the athletes a little bit for this year? We've the Olympic cycle, one Olympic cycle is just finished, and we're into what a lot of them are referring to as year one of the next Olympic cycle. So, that sort of Olympic aim isn't necessarily looming over anyone at the moment. Do you think that'll make the tone of this year a bit different?
I think so, definitely. Wendy's experienced this as an elite athlete herself, so she'll know much better than me. But, I would say that a post-Olympic year, the pressure is off. In the Olympic year, the Olympics is pretty much the be all and end all. All the athletes are wrapping themselves in cotton wool, getting ready for their big competition at the Olympics itself. The year after, I'd imagine athletes can kind of let their hair down a bit and just relax and pick and choose their competitions. There's still a World Championships and lots of other, quite a few other big competitions, but it is surely a bit more relaxing than an Olympic year. I'm not sure if Wendy would agree.
Yeah, Wendy, how difficult is it to navigate? How difficult is it to come back from the Olympics is such a huge focus, and then to follow that up, I guess.
I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? The world's changed massively. The athletics world's changed massively in the last 40 years. But I mean, in '83, I was very excited to be part of the inaugural World Championships on the track, and that has absolutely established itself as a key event for athletes to focus upon, and probably the one where athletics is totally centre stage because there aren't any other sports involved. But I then followed that with '84, and '85 there wasn't going to be, which was the Olympics, obviously. '85 there was at that point no World Championships, so it was even more a bit of a free for all. Before I got injured, I was locked into 3 or 4 races with Mary Decker and Zola Budd again. It was just head to head. No, nothing really on the line other than pride and a desire to win and prove your worth. But this year, I'm sure, although there is a little bit more of perhaps a relaxed approach to the start of the year, there is a World Championships in September. I think the beauty of having it at the end of the year is it does give athletes this opportunity in the first part of the year to go out there, race, enjoy competition without that big Olympic pressure. And you can already see with some of the announcements that are coming out that athletes are indeed taking that opportunity just to test themselves, with a chance then to take a bit of downtime before the outdoor season commences.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting aspect to this year, is the fact that the World Championships in the middle of September will be the final event of the year. So what that has in effect done is given athletes more time to play with, so that they can go, Jason, sort of harder at an indoor season, knowing full well that they've got time to come down from that and then build up again for the outdoors.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to have the biggest event of the year right at the end of the season. It gives a focus for everybody to look forward to, and it makes sense for casual observers of the sports. I mean, you don't have the biggest event of the year kind of 3/4 of the way through the season. It is the climax, so it's certainly worth at least experimenting with this year to see how it works. Personally, I always enjoy the meets in the run-up to the major champs as well. I always find that meetings that take place after the major champs are always a bit flat. Not always, but they often end up being a bit flat. I much prefer the ones that are in the weeks leading up to the major champs, because there's just so much anticipation in the air, and we're obviously going to end up with the vast majority of meetings having that anticipation during this coming season.
Yeah. So if we can look back to December a little bit, one of the big athletic stories certainly in the UK anyway, was Keely Hodgkinson winning the BBC Sports Personality of the Year. She was the first athlete to have done that since Mo Farah in 2017, I believe. And Wendy, how big a deal do you think that was for the sport? Or, was there a danger that we make too much out of this because we're seeing it through sort of the athletics prism kind of thing?
I think those of us who love athletics will always want the sport to be in the spotlight as much as possible. With so many sports available on so many channels on TV now, there's a lot of competition out there. And to have a star like Keely, not just a star of our sport, but a public star in her own right. She's transcended athletics now, I think, into the minds of the general public. And I think winning Sports Personality of the Year is testament to that and testament to how consistently high her performances have been over the last few years since she effectively broke through at the Olympics in Tokyo in 2021 with what was then a stunning silver medal. She's gotten on not only to repeat that standard of performance, but of course in Paris by winning Olympic gold. And I think Sports Personality of the Year just shows how much she has, how much the public have been won over by her personality, her performance. And I think there's a bigger piece around that too. As a young girl, I was inspired watching Lillian Board running supremely on the track at major championships. And that's what started my athletics journey. And I think seeing someone like Keely, like Georgia Bell, like Gemma Reekie, and I'll never forget that the three of them coming down the home straight at the London Stadium last summer. You know, I think that's wonderful for young girls to have those role models, but then to be glamorous and standing on the stage at Sports Personality of the Year as well, it just kind of makes it even more attractive. And I guess that's what we all want too. You know, we want the sport to be inspirational for young people. And I think Keely is absolutely becoming, if she isn't already, that role model for young people to aspire to be.
Yeah. Well, now it's time for a quick word from our partners at Ooredoo. The countdown is on, and you still have the chance to register for the 42-kilometre race at the Doha Marathon by Ooredoo, happening on January the 17th. Don't miss this opportunity to compete in a world-class gold label event and explore the rich culture and breathtaking landmarks of Qatar. Just click the link in the bio to register now before places sell out. Now let's hear from our special guest, Josh Kerr. The World 1500 metre champion had another impressive year in 2024, winning World Indoor 3000 metre gold in front of a home crowd in Glasgow, then cranking up the volume for the Olympic 1500 metre final via his outspoken dealings with arch-rival Jakob Ingebrigtsen. However, it was the USA's Cole Hawker who stormed through to take the gold in Paris. I spoke to the proud Scotsman in December, and the full version of this interview can be found in the January issue of AW magazine, which is out now. In this extract, I began by asking Josh if, after such a challenging year, he leaned more on the core reasons and why he chose athletics in the first place to help keep himself motivated going into 2025.
After a period like you've just had, do you then sort of come back to the core reason of why you do what you do, and what would you say your sort of why is when things get difficult, when it is harder to get out the door? You know, what do you lean back on to get yourself going again?
Yeah, I mean it's a great question. I think your why is pretty fluid, different kind of as the journey continues year on year, and you kind of have to find it after every season finishes, and that will allow you to stay consistent throughout the year. And that's pretty much just goal setting for me, really, is like, okay, so what are the reasons that we're still doing this? And, you know, for me, it's, you know, we've had this journey up until this point, and, you know, the kind of climb to the top of the mountain has been a very long journey. And now we have the tools in place, and, you know, we have a variety of different tools to take us back to the level that we want to be at, which is to be on top of the world. And yeah, it would be a very selfish look on things if I just called it a career here. I think, you know, it's taken so much time to get here. Why just stay for a couple of years, you know? And for me, to be honest, it's like, what can I continue to do to inspire that next generation and keep putting performances out there that's hopefully going to connect to other athletes that'll be like, okay, wow, like if you can do this, then, you know, why not me? And you know, I think the best example of that last year was probably in Glasgow. That was the biggest, if that race wasn't in Glasgow, you wouldn't have seen me there. And so that's kind of where the why comes in at the start of the season, and where it connects throughout the racing. And so this year it's like, can a British male hold on to his world title for more than one effort? And that's my next big goal.
Yeah. Now you've got a bit of distance between yourself and it, what's the sort of the overriding emotion about Paris, or the sort of the first word that kind of comes to mind when you think about it?
That's a great question. I think, my initial thing was always, it's such a team effort, and to be able to, in a 3-year cycle, come away with, Olympic bronze, Olympic silver, and 2 World Championship gold medals. Like, you have to respect this sport for what it's really good at, and that's like keeping you honest and like kind of pulling you back down to like reality a lot. And we can go back and forth all year with really good 1500 meter runners, and then we can just be blasted with someone completely new. But for me, it's like, if I walk away from that competition with anything but content, then I've done a disservice to the team of people that allowed me to get into that position. And that's, this team is growing. My team is growing on a month-to-month basis at this point, and everyone just put in their best effort, and so did I, and that was the result. And we have to be super proud to be, one of the best athletes in the world consistently year on year. And I'm not cheating, so it's like, at the end of the day, you have to accept the results for what they are, and you can't, be too worried about what's going on in other people's camps and what other people are doing, because you just have to focus on yourself and accept those results and move on to the next one. And I think that's what the sport's also good at. It's pretty fast paced, and there's always another competition on the horizon.
Yeah. And you mentioned obviously that, Grand Slam track's on the horizon next year, or in the coming year. I guess there's an excitement about being part of something different and something new. Now, Michael was talking about it recently and saying, he thinks he can help save track. I was just curious if you, as someone who's in an event which is creating headlines and is getting a lot of attention, how much do you think track does need saving?
It's a tough question. I think it's going in the right direction. I think we're growing as a sport, but the big thing with the Grand Slam track is bringing a professional league to an amateur sport. I could sign you on a Josh Kerr shoe deal right now and put you in a diamond league, and you would be a professional athlete. It doesn't matter what level of performance you are; it's who you know. And I think there has to be. It's got to be a bit more cutthroat for it to be seen as a professional sport. But I think it can elevate at each level of our competition. By bringing in more races at a higher level, it pushes everyone else's fees up. As an athlete point of view, and people can get in diamond leagues that weren't in diamond leagues, and then people can aspire to be on the level of Grand Slam track when they are at the level of Grand Slam track. I think it gives more of a platform for the athletes to have, a say in what we're doing and try and promote our sport. And so I think it's a great thing. I don't think we particularly needed saving from like a growth standpoint, because I think we are making great growth, but I also just think this could just kickstart a whole new era of track and field, which is really exciting to be a part of.
Yeah, how much have you been a part of sort of discussions and things so far? Have you, is your opinion sort of taken into account as to how they're developing it? How's it working?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm signed on as an ambassador of Grand Slam track. I was the second person to be signed on, and so I'm not just a racer. I'm also part of helping them design what we think is the best way, especially from the athlete's point of view. Like, when we should run the 8, when we should run the 15, like, how long in between, kind of like just random little things that athletes should have an opinion on.
Thanks again to Josh for taking the time to talk to me. Wendy, Josh is based in the US, so in lots of ways it makes sense for him to be so heavily involved with Grand Slam track, which is going to be based over in America for its first outings this year. But what it definitely means as well is he's obviously going to be racing a great deal more. It guarantees he's going to be racing a great deal more than he has for someone who quite famously has been very, very selective about his schedule. It just shows again, highlights again how different this year's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see the impact of Grand Slam track. I mean, there are a couple of athletes in there that perhaps we don't see as often as we'd like, that are committed to running two events across the weekend 4 times pretty early on in the season, really. And it'll be exciting, it'll be exciting to see how Grand Slam track works. It'd be interesting to see how the athletes perform under a slightly different kind of pressure, running 2 different events. And it'll be interesting to see how then that fits into the rest of their season, because it's all new, isn't it? It's a very different look to the year this year. But I think most people who've watched Josh race know that he is a true racer. So it will be those races, that men's 8 and 15 at Grand Slam track, will be exciting events and exciting competitions. So they've got the first 3 from the Olympic finals. So that's not a bad start for the 1500 start list, is it really?
Yeah, well, Jason, I think the 1500 meter sort of scene, as it were, there's obviously the key cast of characters, but there's more and more names coming into the mix now. Obviously, Cole, it's not that Cole Hawker wasn't in the mix before, but he's obviously put himself at the forefront now. You've got someone like Jared Negusi, who has been so consistent over the past couple of years. Young talents like Niels Laros, who's starting to emerge as well. There's the sort of the momentum keeps rolling.
Yeah, I think with the men's 1500 meters, certainly in championship style races, you can almost throw a blanket over the top half a dozen guys, at least, maybe even more than half a dozen. Josh Kerr and Jared Negus, obviously Ingebrigtsen, Cole Hocker, Hobbs Kessler, the rising force of Niels Laros, Jake Whiteman, a resurgent Jake Whiteman, hopefully. The list goes on. I mean, it's very, very hard to pick who the actual best guy on a particular day would be out of that bunch. It's highly competitive, and it just makes it all the more entertaining when they do race up.
Well, thank you very much to both of you for joining me, and thank you to you, our listeners, for listening. And a special thanks to our sponsor for this episode, the Doha Marathon by Ooredoo. Remember, there is still time to join this incredible World Athletics Global event. Click the link in the bio to secure your spot today. We'll be back next month for more from the Athletics Weekly podcast. In the meantime, the January issue of AW is out now, available via athleticsweekly.com and selected retailers. You can also keep right up to date with the latest athletics news by heading to athleticsweekly.com and following the AW social media channels. Please also like and subscribe to the Athletics Weekly podcast on your usual podcast platform. See you next time.